6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and kick this meeting off. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. This is a city council regular meeting, March 31st, last day of March. We are live here at the mill and also broadcasting on our YouTube channel. I will call this meeting to order and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Chellen, can I get a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Araya,
Here.
Councilmember McManus,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Shipman,
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad,
Present.
Councilmember Edwards,
Present.
Councilmember Packard.
Here.
And the Mayor Gailey will not be in attendance tonight, so I will do my best to get us through this meeting. And to that end, everyone has an agenda in front of them. I've had a chance to take a look at it. Do we have any requests for any changes or additions or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We have an agenda. That brings us to citizen comments. I have 4 green sheets in front of me. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for double checking. Let's start and see how many folks we have online.
I have 2 people online. So again, if you would like to speak, did you want to take this first?
That'd be great. Can I say one thing really quick?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we have 6 so far citizen comments, just want to remind folks, we do have 3 minutes maximum. We're going to stick to that 3 minutes. And then if somebody before you has said something that you want to say, if you can just be concise and say anything additional, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So yeah, for the people that are online on our Zoom meeting, if you would like to speak to the council right now during public comment, please raise your digital hand and I will bring you into the meeting. I am seeing no hands.
Great, thank you. Then I'll start with my first sheet, which is Rachel Horner. You have an order. Okay, who's going to go first? Excellent. Jeff, you're first up. Okay. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and let us know what you're here to talk about.
My name is Jeff Pegram. I'm going to talk about Aquafest.
Great.
Council members, my name is Jeff Pegram, as I just said. I grew up here. My grandparents are resting in Machias at the only cemetery in the area closest to their home. My mother grew up here. My kids grew up here, and now my grandkids are growing up here. My roots run deep here. This is my town. If you don't grow up here, then welcome. This is now our town. At 24, I volunteered as a firefighter here before making my career. I bought my first house here at 26. I'm the co-founder of the Lake Stevens Charitable Thrift Store, which gives back to this community. I love it here. I attended my first Aquafest parade in 1975. My daughter attended hers in 1995. Today, I serve as co-vice president, doing my best to pass this gift along to my grandchildren and every other child who's gonna experience their first parade or carnival. For more than half a century, this event has been fully supported by the city. I understand the city's facing some financial challenges, but should Aquafest be a casualty of those challenges? Or should the departments responsible for those financial issues be held responsible? It's my understanding that Aquafest funding is already included in this year's budget. If that's the case, why is the vote needed to approve the funding? Seems to me this vote is out of order. If any changes are made, the appropriate action would be to vote on removing the funding, not approving what's already in place. I urge you to call this vote out of order and allow Aquafest to continue as it has for decades. Then with ample time, we can have a thoughtful discussion for 2027 and work together towards a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Hello, my name is Raquel Pegram and I am Jeff Pegram's wife. Good evening, council members and community members as well. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. When we talk about why we choose to all be involved in our community, I'd like to speak specifically through the lens of Aquafest. Because Aquafest is more than just an event, it's a reflection of who we are as a city. Aquafest represents connection. It's where neighbors become friends, where families create traditions, and where our community comes together in a way that you can feel. It's not just something people attend, it's something people belong to. The why behind Aquafest starts with pride. Pride in a city, pride in our lake, pride in the people who call this place home. It is about showcasing what makes our community special and creating something that everyone from lifetime residents to first-time visitors can experience and enjoy. But Aquafest does not just happen. It is built by volunteers, by hundreds of hours, and by individuals who give their evenings, weekends, and their energy, often behind the scenes, to make this tradition continue. It is built by local businesses who invest back into this community and the community it serves. It is built through partnership with city leadership, organizations, and residents, all working towards something bigger than any one of us. We are involved because we understand that impact. Aquafest supports local businesses, and it brings visitors into our city. It creates opportunities for connection that lasts far beyond a single weekend. It gives our youth a sense of involvement and belonging. It strengthens the identity of what our community can and will be. And perhaps most of all, it becomes a legacy. Aquafest has been a tradition of generations. The work we have put in today ensures that we will continue for generations to come. The memories being made now on the waterfront, at the parade, and during all of these events are shaping how people will remember this community for years. So when we see the effort behind Aquafest, it is not just about the planning an event. It is about preserving something meaningful. It's about showing up for our community and for making sure it thrives. The why is very simple. We care deeply about this city, and we believe in bringing people together, and we are committed to keeping that spirit alive through Aquafest. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for considering all of the things that we say tonight and taking into consideration helping us continue this tradition for years to come.
Thank you. Who's next? Thanks, Cindy.
All right, good evening, council members. My name is Cindy Lemos. I've been a resident at Lake Stevens since 2015. I live here with my family, including my 9-year-old twins. We're proud to call this community home. Professionally, I work in the res tech industry with a focus on customer experience, technology, and strategic partnerships. I only recently joined Aquafest, officially as a volunteer officially in January, so I'm very new here. However, I've attended Aquafest for many years with my family, and it's something that we truly value. After 57 years of this incredible tradition, I felt it was time to step up and help carry the torch. Now that my kids are older, I have the time and I desire to give back to the community, something that has brought so much joy to this community and will continue to shape my children's experience growing up here. In my short time as a volunteer, 2 things have really stood out to me. First, the volunteers. I've been genuinely amazed by the dedication, time, and energy that so many people have given for years, completely unpaid to make this event happen. This is a massive undertaking that serves 30,000 attendees and is powered almost entirely by a community of volunteers. That level of commitment is extraordinary. My second shock factor was the timing and the nature of the city's recent cost proposal. From a business perspective, this was difficult for me to comprehend. Budgets are typically planned annually, so 12 months in advance. And Aquafest has already been in motion for months. So to introduce a potential $40,000 to $47,000 expense with just a few months before the event, especially after many years of in-kind support, creates a significant and unexpected burden for a nonprofit organization. I've never seen a situation like this before. 4 to 5 months is simply not enough to absorb costs of this size, especially for volunteer-driven organizations. Additionally, the lack of clarity around the amount makes it even more challenging to plan responsibly. So my request to council tonight is this. Please consider delaying any new or additional city-imposed costs until 2027. This will allow for time for proper planning, transparency, and collaboration. But more importantly, it would protect Aquafest this year. a 57-year tradition woven into the memories of this community, something families plan for, look forward to, and pass down to their children, like me, and something that would leave a real void in Lake Stevens if it didn't happen. I do have about 30 comments, citizen comments that we collected through Facebook. I only have 3 copies if I can pass it around.
If
And I
you
just
could-
want to say thank you for your time, your service, and your consideration.
Thank you. If you could give a copy to the clerk, then they can make copies for us. Thank you so much.
Good evening, council members. My name is Rachel Horner, and I'm the secretary of Aquafest. I moved to Lake Stevens with my husband in 2017, and I have to say I love where I live. I grew up in West Seattle, and every summer we had neighborhood block parties, street fairs, music, food, people, and of course, the beach. Those are some of my strongest childhood memories, and I've lived a few places since then, and I haven't found that same feeling until I moved here. Like those street fairs, block parties, and events, Aquafest brings people together. They create memories and they give our town identity. I wish I could talk about Aquafest today with the same enthusiasm as I did in years past, but instead over the past few months, what we've seen is a conversation about whether a volunteer-run nonprofit festival should somehow be responsible for solving a city financial crisis. At the last meeting, council asked for an economic impact study. So over the last week, I did that work. Aquafest brings approximately 30,000 people downtown from Thursday night to Sunday night. That number is derived from facilities usage data. This is how we estimate attendance because Aquafest is free and open to the community. We don't charge at the gate like most festivals. During these 4 days, we host a carnival, a ski tournament, a car show, the Aqua Run, live entertainment, vendors, list goes on, and many free activities for families. Using conservative festival economic modeling, the same type used by tourism boards in cities across the country, I estimated that the average attendee spends about $50 during the weekend on rides, food, vendors, restaurants, and local retail. That is conservative. When you apply that against attendance, it's roughly $1.5 million in spending over 4 days. And when you apply small city economic multipliers, that grows to 2.2 million. And because 70% of that spending is taxable, Aquafest produces roughly 90,000 to 110,000 in tax revenue. That's revenue that goes directly to the city. And that estimate does not include the increased sales in local businesses that benefit around us. Aquafest is not just a festival, it's an economic engine for the city. And here is the irony. Aquafest is a nonprofit run entirely by volunteers that managed to turn a $30,000 profit last year, and the city is now asking for all of that and more. So when we talk about financial challenges the city may be facing, particularly those that have developed over the past 6 years, solving those problems on the backs of nonprofits and volunteers is not only unfair, in the case of Aquafest, it simply doesn't make financial sense. Because the real question tonight is, when a volunteer-run nonprofit brings millions of dollars of economic activity to a city, should we be asking if we should charge it more or how to support it?
That's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
So I'm the last person, at least in our group.
I don't have a green sheet for you, sir. But I'm gonna overlook it. I'm gonna.
I emailed, Sarah asked me for who to do it, and I gave her the whole thing.
All
I
right.
gave her the names, and you said no green sheet.
I said green sheets are in the back for public comment. I apologize.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. So good evening, council members. My name is Chris Jacobson, and I serve as the president of Aquafest. As you heard from my wife, Rachel Horner, we care deeply about this community. Before I go any further, I want to thank the board members. I want to thank the chairs, and I want to thank all the volunteers. You're an amazing group of people that have so much love for this community. I can't even express how deeply grateful I am. Aquafest has been a part of the city for 57 years. It's been organized by dedicated volunteers, supported by local sponsors, and historically partnered with the city to bring our community together each summer. First, I'd like to acknowledge an important point. We understand that the city is facing financial challenges, and we respect the difficult decisions must be made. However, the situation before us tonight is not about long-term policy, or future planning. It's about timing and practicality. Aquafest is just 100 days away, and we still don't have clarity regarding the financial impacts. At this stage in the planning process, contracts have been signed, entertainment's been scheduled, the carnival's been secured, and permitting and logistics are already underway. However, due to this uncertainty, we have still not yet opened up vendor registration. The longer this delay continues, the greater the likelihood those vendors will commit events in nearby communities, such as Sultan or Arlington. As Rachel mentioned, this is ultimately about where 30,000 people will gather in our city, contributing to our local economy, or plain simply, they're just going to go elsewhere. Aquafest brings us the diversity of our community together. It's a time where neighbors reconnect, new friendships are formed, and lasting memories are created. This event does not happen overnight. It requires a full year of planning by volunteers, individuals who generously give their time, often at the expense of their personal and family commitments, because they believe in this community. The financial changes being discussed tonight were introduced after our planning process was already well underway. Quite simply, there's no realistic way to replace that funding through fundraising with only a few months remaining. If the city would like to revisit how Aquafest is funded in the future, we're absolutely open to that conversation. In fact, we welcome it. We'd be glad to meet to discuss sustainable partnership what it could look like for 2027 and beyond, but ideally before the end of Q3. However, making significant changes to a 57-year tradition with only 100 days remaining places the entire event at risk, not just for the volunteers, but for the thousands of families, businesses, and communities who look forward to this every year. So tonight, our request is straightforward. We ask the council to allow Aquafest to proceed this year as it has in the past, under the existing and previously approved budget. We respectfully hope the council will make the decision that prioritizes and
minutes.
supports our community.
Thank you, Chris.
And I would love people to actually listen and get off their computer.
The next green sheet I have is for Rick Trout.
Hello, I'm Rick Trout. I live at 1706 123rd, the blue house right over there. First, I want to second everything that's been mentioned here. I'm the first one who didn't write everything down that I'm going to say, so this is going to be completely off the cuff. Could get in trouble. But starting with family stuff, you know, we moved here in 03. Son grew up here, going to, you know, the kid parade. We had the dog parade. We were just cleaning out a bathroom. I still have ribbons from when my son was in the kid parade at Aquafest. And so he grew up having a carnival in his driveway, essentially, you know, right in this area. And I'll kind of speak to two things regarding that. Number one, again, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. The 7 houses that are mostly impacted here, I've never heard a single complaint about Aquafest. I mean, maybe when I first was here, I was working for Bartell Drugs, 30 years at Bartell's, last 10 years at the one here in Lake Stevens. Sometimes I had to go to work, you know, late in the day when a parade was happening. So I would have to figure out the logistics, but nobody really complained about Aquafest. We all loved it. Secondly, just my son, as it was really neat to see him grow up from initially when they're really little and you're out there with them, you know, every second that he's out there. And then they get to that age where it's like, oh my gosh, you can go to the carnival with your friends and mom and I will hang back at the house. And it was just really neat to see. He would see friends, you know, from school, from other schools. He started at Zion Lutheran, so we had a lot of friends from Snohomish that would come in. Then you had, you know, his middle school, high school, you know, it just turned into this really kind of community type thing. And it was really cool to see all these kids who, you know, now you hear everybody complaining that there's not enough stuff for kids to do. Well, Aquafest is an amazing weekend, at least for the kids that I saw. A lot of our friends would come to our house and just stay for the weekend because it was too hard to get in and out. We would have tents because all the bedrooms would be full. So we'd have like tents set up in the yard for the kids, and we'd just stay there all weekend. As far as the financial stuff, that's kind of a surprise to me. Kind of like Rachel said, I grew up, you know, in Burien area going to Seafair. My my parents and grandparents lived in Yakima. They had community days, which was, I think, more of a veteran type thing, but it was still a similar type event. You know, seafair they charged for. Community days was free. And Aquafest kind of reminds me of community days, you know, in the Yakima Sila area. I do have 15 seconds. Let's just fund this thing because, oh, I know what to say. I think my group alone, one time we had friends up from Sacramento. We went to Buzz Inn one morning. I think we bought 20 Bloody Marys.
That's
Like,
3 minutes.
just our-
Thank you, Rick. All right, I have a couple of green sheets that were turned in late. we're gonna do these last two and then we're gonna call it for tonight and move on to the rest of the agenda. So the next person I have is Kim Daughtry.
Who's that?
Okay, first off, I'm Kim Daughtry, 2615 Lake Drive. I've never had to say that before. I think most everybody in this room knows who I am, what I do, and how associated I am with the last 15 years at Aquafest, and what I've done on that. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Aquafest is important. There's no doubt about that. The board has said what they need to say. It is a very important event for this community. What I want to talk about is community. I want to talk about the nonprofits, and I want to talk about history. Let's start with the history. When we had that old community center down here, we had to put a three sink out there, stainless steel, put a hot water tank on it, and it was plugged into where the range was plugged in the community center, and it shocked the crap out of people. That was when I was getting involved with Aquafest. Then on the council, we decided to tear down the community center. We decided to do a whole bunch of stuff downtown. And what you see is what we had been envisioned and what we had gone for. But the historical part of this is that what we have forgotten is the promises we made, because we had so much pushback on losing that community center by the nonprofits because they all used it. It was a very cheap alternative for them to do their meetings, to have little events. The library used to use it all the time for readings with the kids, just about every day during the summer. That community center was well used, and it showed it, and it needed to be torn down. But we promised the nonprofits, of which there's probably 4 or 5 represented here tonight, that we wouldn't affect the nonprofits. And what the council did a little over a month ago definitely affected the nonprofits. They've been priced out of the community center. That's the history. And you all need to know that, because there's a couple of us that were still on the council when that happened. And we've been voted out. Got it. I'm actually enjoying life again. Got 20 hours a week back. This is great. I'm not running for mayor. Stop it. Quit calling me. I just want you to understand what you're doing to the nonprofits. They cannot afford this anymore. It's just not in the cards. So you lost that part of the community.
Thank you. Last green sheet I have is, I think it's Keith. Yes.
Thank you for your time. I'm Keith Perry. I own Jay's Market across the street. Been a part of this community for 20 plus years as an owner of a business. And I've watched this business be something that's beautiful and grow with the community. We're all here because Lake Stevens is a beautiful place to live. I didn't come here with something to write. I came here with my heart. I think Aquafest has been a beautiful part of our community for many years. I've loved it. I love being a part of it. Adversely, recently in the last 5 or 6 years, it's been difficult for our business to run during this time because we are overwhelmed with the amount of people that come to our market and either steal from us or cause us a lot of anguish. It's difficult for us as a small business owner to be in this part of the community. As we look at other communities and how they do their festivals, they do it in like Snohomish, our closest. They do it in the field outside of Lake Stevens, outside of their downtown area. We have to deal with these 30,000 people in our backyard. It's difficult. And like our previous council member said, I did it in the past because that money went back to give people turkey dinners and Christmas gifts. So I do agree with them. It's tragic that we're not going to have those service community values back there, because I was a part of that in a lot of small ways, helping those communities, those small, the Kiwanis, the Lions, give back to our communities so I can see it grow everywhere else. But what we're doing right now and what this is doing to our community by not allowing it to go forward, it's sad in a lot of ways. But the only thing I would wish I can, and I've had conversations abruptly with Chris, is that we can be a part of it as a downtown community. And they can be a part of us and let us understand what's going on and be a part of what is this big picture, because we're left out. We're left out the whole entire time. We're asked to just buckle up and take the ride. And that's hard for us. We've had to endure the whole downtown reviolation. It's been hard. It's hard to keep that. On an average weekend on July, I do about $18,000 on a beautiful day with that beautiful boat launch open, and I love it. And I love supporting my community. When Aquafest comes around, I do about $11,000, and I have 4 times the amount of people in my store. So I have to staff more, and I have more theft. I'm not saying I don't like Aquafest. I'm saying I don't hate it. I just want to have a community event that we all are awarded with the idea. We can sit here and talk about these economics where they think that these 30,000 people are walking through my door and they're giving me everything I can, because if it was, I'd give back to those service communities. I would. Every inch of my heart would tell you I'd do that. But I'm not going to tell you that anymore. It's not the case. It's too big of an event. And if they want to include us and let us know how this is going, I can't be a part of it. I'm not going to support it. If they want to open that door, I'd love to have it. But right now, it hurts my business. And I'm considering closing for the first time in 20 years during this event, because it's so hard for us to be part of this. So I thank you, all of you, for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for taking the time for public comment. Much appreciated. The next item on our agenda is an action item, the Aquafest 2026 in-kind request. I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Sarah Garso, Parks and Recreation Director. I provided a staff report as well as some supplement attachments. I since had also emailed out one revised financial attachment just to help break down how the money is divided between columns. I can share my screen if requested, but I didn't prepare a formal presentation. As stated here today, Aquafest is the largest special event in the city of Lake Stevens. It started in 1969, which is 57 years ago, and has grown into the event that it is today. That, of course, includes the Lakeside Festivals, parades, fireworks, and lots of community involvement. They are a 100% volunteer-run organization and a 501c4, which is a civic organization. That is a not-for-profit. Every dollar raised goes directly towards producing the events and expenses. So profit from last year would roll over into this year in order to pay deposits and allow events to function, is how that works out on the financial side. The breakdown of the request for 2026 is preferred to copy and paste the support that was held last year by the city. That is the #1 request from Aquafest. That would include full rental of the mill with 100% fee waivers. From that, we identified about 4 different items that could be reduced or modified if it is the city council's desire, that would have a small impact on the event. But anything outside of what is written down in the charts provided would be a larger impact to the event. I know we have Mariah here to represent Aquafest. If council has any direct questions for her or for myself, I'm happy to answer. And again, just let me know if you want to share my screen. I open it to council discussion.
Thank you, Sarah.
I would request you share your screen, please.
Absolutely. So I will share the last one that I shared out, but I am absolutely able to switch between the other ones as well. I'm just looking for the share button. And we're live. So at the top, you can see the in-kind contribution that is approved within the city department. That is the equivalent of about just shy of 19,000. I'm going to zoom in here at a request. There's a screen. And then the bottom portion is what's coming to council to review. So on the main left-hand side, I broke down what council has to review. And then on the right-hand side, I just added that to total effect as you go down the different line items to show, would it reduce city expense? Would it increase Aquafest expense, or is it simply removing the support? So one of the proposed items is on Saturday and Sunday. City staff is provided at the quantity of 2 to help with restrooms and trash. So that's the first one on the list.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Can you clarify a comment in that you say staff support on that specific item? Aquafest is working to secure a green team. If successful, this will have no effect on the event needs. I didn't follow what you're trying to say there.
Last year specifically, there was not a robust green team. And so the Aquafest board did a lot of the trash management. But with that, there is a high need to have the trash pulled more often. We were planned to have 1 city staff on Saturday night, and we held a second city staff into the night. I personally also pulled trashes for over an hour.
Yeah, I don't understand if successful, meaning if they can secure a green team, this will have no effect on the event needs. I don't know what you mean by that.
If we reduce staff from 2 from the Public Works Park side to pull trash,
Okay.
if we reduce that to 1, and there is a green team,
Okay,
then the trash and restrooms will still be serviced as needed.
understood. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions for Sarah?
So I just want to make sure that I'm seeing this clearly. It says $18,869 has already been approved by the department for Aquafest, correct?
Correct.
And so today we're being asked to approve an additional $41,000.
Correct.
Okay.
And that breakdown is on this very small and large spreadsheet. It is available in PDF. I can zoom in or scroll around to anything that you desire.
Can we clarify on that, whether the Aquafest donations are in the budget or not? Because I've heard both it is and is not.
Absolutely. So Aquafest does not have a line item in the budget for the city of Lake Stevens. What it is we have our overtime budgets for each of our departments. And as you look year to year, our overtime budget for this year is the same or around about the same as last year. So we didn't remove these costs from the budget. Of course, if it's not spent, then we will come in under budget, or I know that the council is looking in supplemental budgets in the future.
So is it fair to say that the overtime that was spent by the city last year was covered under the budgeted overtime for last year?
I would have to look at the other departments and their ending balance for overtime. I know Parks and Recreation exceeded our overtime budget by double.
Okay, and that's including the Aquafest.
All events, correct?
All events.
Yes.
So I guess as a newcomer to council, when I first started digging into the city's involvement in Aquafest, I had seen a number not nearly as high as $59,000. And even that number was kind of a shock as someone who had never had any experience with what city had supported with Aquafest. Upon that, I had asked around to some other council members and other community members that are involved in nonprofits. And no one really knew what the city had been supporting for Aquafest. So whenever anyone heard that number, they were like, holy cow, that's huge. Why did we not know about this? And so As someone who is involved in multiple nonprofits, I fully understand the struggle when it comes to find funding for events, and I empathize with that. I see that Aquafest is a huge, important event for our community, whether it's, you know, economic or socially. As a new council member coming in, you know, I was elected to make decisions for the people that I represent, and it's clear that many people in Lake Stevens want to support Aquafest. My concern is before the Parks Department was developed in 2023, no one really kept track of how much Aquafest was supported by the city. It was just kind of like, oh, you need support, here you go. And I think the fact that we are able to now put a value on what we're supporting with is important so that we can keep track and make sure that not only are all of our nonprofits locally supported, but there's no favoritism. And I understand that Aquafest is a huge event compared to some others. I also want to note on the community center. So I was one of the people who used that community center. I think it was $10 an hour for nonprofits to rent. We had repair cafes, we had all of these things. And we were told not to worry. We would have a place that was affordable, that we could be having these events. That's apparently not true, right? We never got that. We have the mill, which is amazing. I love the mill. It's a beautiful building and there are some great events that are held here. But we are here now and we have to be conscious on where expenses are going. And so with that, you know, we're all tightening our belts. The nonprofits that I work for, we're 100% strictly donations. Some of them who even hold events here in the city and have received zero contribution. And so I want to make it clear that this is, for me personally, absolutely not anything against Aquafest or its organizers, but fiscally looking at these numbers as someone who had never seen them before, it was shocking. And I hope that people can understand that. But on that note, you know, I would love to vote to support Aquafest, but I'm still kind of struggling at that $59,000. So, you know, if we could get a green team, is that something that has been looked into for this year? You know, I see that Aquafest would potentially be paying for their own garbage bags and for their own cones. If the overtime is in fact budgeted, not specifically for Aquafest, but in general, then I could see we may have a little wiggle room for that this year. But there's a lot of stuff on this line item list that I think, you know, should be reconsidered. And I do have some questions. Last year, I know that Aquafest had, was it the first year that Aquafest had a for-profit beer garden in the park here, or was this the second year of that?
We're invite Mariah up to speak on behalf of Aquafest.
So, and I want to make sure that we're focused first on questions. And so we have an opportunity to ask Sarah questions, and then Mariah is going to be available to answer any questions directed at Aquafest.
Okay.
Would you like to repeat your question now that I've walked up here?
No, I got distracted.
You asked about the for-profit.
Yeah, so the beer, so one of the things that drew my attention and also the attention of others that I have looked at this with is that, you know, we as a city are gifting specifically the observation deck for Aquafest to use. It's listed here as the in-kind allowance. So where's?
Correct. So all of the facilities other than the mill are at 100% approval at this point. So that approves the observation deck, which is the area that's wood that overlooks the lake.
So Aquafest is not paying for that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and last year was the first year that you had a beer garden inside of Aquafest. Is that
correct? So in years past, we had used that observation deck or a similar area up there, and we used that for our VIPs. So those that had donated quite a bit of money in order to have the event, we had invited them in, catered kind of like a dinner on the Saturday night. Last year was the first time we opened that up then to more like a small beer garden. The beer garden that's typically held behind Jay's Market was run by Kiwanis, and that was a separate permit and separate from Aquafest at that time.
Yeah, and and I'm actually a volunteer. I volunteered a couple of years for the Beer Garden at Aquafest as well as Aquafest main event last year. And so the reason why I'm asking is because the Kiwanis Beer Garden is not happening this year. And part of that is due to not having the income from people here in our community supporting, not that the beer garden wasn't supported. But it's just people kind of raise an eyebrow when they see the city paying for a spot for a for-profit business to set up shop. So my question is, does Rustic Cork, which I believe is the business, do they give any of their funds to Aquafest? And if so, to what extent?
Yes, so they are a sponsor of the event. They bring in the alcohol and then they split the profits with us.
Okay.
And so last year we received 500, I believe, 600 from Rustic Cork for having that event up there.
Thank you.
Kind of along that line, I'm concerned that, Chris, are you the president of Aquafest? And our parks director have different answers to whether or not that's included in kind. And so I have some concerns about the conversations that were had prior to this public meeting. And if everybody was on the same page, and we're asked to make a very important decision, and it doesn't sound like everyone's on the same page. And while I absolutely recognize how close this festival is and how important it is to the community, my question is, because I know we're supposed to stick to our questions, are we even ready for this meeting? Because it doesn't sound to me like we're all on the same page here. And I'm not comfortable making a decision when we've got two groups that haven't gotten together and had a reasonable discussion where we're all on the same page.
Let me clarify that I have been working with Aquafest. We met last Monday, came to council on Tuesday to give my update, and then on Thursday I attended the Aquafest board meeting virtually. They were unable to secure a time separately to meet with me between now and then, but at that meeting, unfortunately, I know Chris and Mariah were gone from that. I'm assuming they caught up on minutes, but it could be that the conversation that we had there, you might have some information if you feel that one person didn't have all of that. I would say that this is a correct accounting of the event and what the city is and is not providing.
Why are you shaking your head?
So the big chunk of the money that's in there is police
Oh, wait,
overtime.
hold on. If we're going to allow speaking, you can answer the question, but I need you to speak into the mic, please. Thank you.
I'm just saying, because this is the board in the front row,
So,
correct?
yes, so the largest expense in that 59,000 that you guys are looking at is police overtime. That's the largest amount. The amount that's given on there is $150 an hour. That is not what the city is paying. That's the contracted rate that we would pay if we were going to pay the bill. The police officers are not getting $150 an hour for their overtime. So the city amount, the city has to pay is much less than the amount that you're being given.
Thank you for that explanation. Sarah, do you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. So the billable rate is set by the finance department, and the finance department does look at the actual expenses for hourly wages, including all taxes and benefits that we have as a city. And all of the police are on overtime shifts. They have to have their normal patrol out to support the city and all safety needs of the city. And then extra officers are here for Aquafest. And we did speak with police, and police was at our first meeting. We are at the bare minimum. Most shifts, there are only 4 officers plus 1 person at incident command. Where we have more officers is to support the runs and the parades. And so I understand it can be hard to understand the real costs of cutting checks by the time the finance department cuts them, but those are accurate costs.
Yes, Councilman Packard.
I appreciate all the comments today. I appreciate the dialogue around the individual line items. I think we should have that, but I do agree with some of the comments from the council, from the Aquafest board that really like this is a matter of timing. I think the timing is poor. I don't want to hold up Aquafest. If we want to talk about something in terms of substantive changes to how we want to fund this, I'm fully open to that conversation. I think we should have it. I think we should be very careful about how we're going to spend our money as a city and consider all of those needs. I just don't think that we should be doing that right now. So I won't go so far as making a motion quite yet, but I propose that we pass this now. If we continue to have the discussion today about specific line items, happy to do that. But yeah, I really just would press that timing wise, we should approve it and explore details and opportunities to adjust down the road.
Yep. So we need to finish up with questions
Yes,
first, and
sure.
then there'll be an opportunity to make a motion, and
Sure.
then we'll have plenty of time for discussion.
Sounds
I do
good.
have a
Great.
question. So
Great.
Perfect. Sarah, first off, I apologize if you answered this at some point. Until very recently, I did not realize there was an updated version of this sheet available to us. I'm now up to speed on that. I believe last week I saw a number that was roughly $47,000. And I asked a question along the lines of, we don't expect our contribution this year to exceed that. And now I'm seeing this $59,000 number, and I'm wondering if I'm looking at two different numbers or if the number has really gone up by that much. Trying to figure out where I missed something between now and last week.
The number that was on the spreadsheet that council has been focusing on is the one in green under city expenses, fee and waivers, 41,1980.
Okay.
So the addition of the 18,869 is the in-kind that has already been approved by staff. I have never presented those in a sum total to you before, which I did on the right-hand side to ensure you got the full picture, but also if one staff was removed, it would just go away versus where would Aquafest reasonably have to pick up expenses on some of these other decisions. And that way you understood the impact in looking at these.
Okay. So that the 18,000 was always in there. We just had never seen it lumped together as the takeaway.
Yes, where it is on this screen is the number just to the right of the 41. And so the total here, 59, was often overlooked likely in our conversations. And you can see the
Okay.
columns here with in-kind and needs council approval.
Okay. That's what I suspected. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sarah, just a quick question on the follow-up on the cost headcount for police department overtime. I'm imagining, the officers aren't getting the entire chunk of pay, but I'm sure that overage is to pay for coordination of scheduling, other benefits that have to be considered with overtime. Is that accurate to get to that 150 number?
They do not get paid 151 per hour.
Right.
But they get paid their wage plus all taxes and benefits. And
Right.
I'm happy to pass that over to our finance expert.
No, I just want to make sure that we're clarifying that it's not a direct line cost of here's the hourly rate and that's what they pay, right?
Correct.
It includes the city's cost on that.
Includes insurance, taxes, all of the items you have to pay
Gotcha.
when you.
Right. And I think everybody wants to see Aquafest go. I think everybody's kind of surprised at the number, but I still think if you put that to the community that the city was going to spend 59,000 on Aquafest, they would be fine with it. They wouldn't be happy with it, they were fine with it. I'm sure they would point to a million other things we wasted money on in their minds, right? That came up with this number. But not to get into that, I think I agree with Councilman Packard. I think that this year, with the burden of time that we have, I would think that I would recommend that we move forward. I would, however, say that Aquafest committee for next year needs to really do better on getting that number down proactively ahead of time and work with the city to do that, right? Yeah, and we're open to that. That's the best way I can say it, right? So that's all we really have to comment on.
Councilwoman Shippen.
I have a question, not a comment. My question is, as I've listened to the board come to the podium and speak, that it takes a year to get this off the ground and going. A lot of time, a lot of effort. When did they reach out to the city? Did we approve all this in advance and now we're going back on it? Or did the board just recently approach the city to clarify that, we're going to do the same thing we've always done? Are we going back on our word? So in other words, when they first started planning the 2026 Aquafest, had the city agreed to 100% in kind and now we're changing it? Or by the time they reached out, it had already been changed?
One of our park staff sits on every board meeting to help answer questions and facilitate things, saying that it's not me. However, I do believe that it was expected for the same level of support to continue. Although I will say at least a couple members of the board were aware that this was going to be a topic, the in-kind program would be looked at, and a portion would have to come to council to approve. I don't believe that we've ever actually sat down and looked at numbers. And I understand that this didn't happen last July. It's happening in February and March. And so I think probably the most concern is how close we are to the event this time.
And I would add to that as an Aquafest board member that we learned about it through council's meeting in February. We were not approached ahead of time that that would be a change in what support we had been given in years past.
And did you reach out to the city when you began planning 2026 to clarify how much in-kind donation the city was going to provide as you were planning this far into it, especially if
No.
you knew we were going to discuss it?
I did not know you were going to discuss it.
I'm sorry, I
and
misunderstood.
So we did not have that pre-warning that that would be a different discussion than we had always expected. And we had a city staff member, like Sarah said, in all of our board meetings that never brought that up, that that would be a change that council was considering.
Okay, Mayor.
Yeah, Councilwoman Araya.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody that was here. I think my questions throughout this process since the February discussion, which was brought to council as a discussion item, but the way it was a bit ambiguous on what exactly the action item was. I think what my impression at that time was that we are agreeing on modifying the in-kind program, but there was no specific implementation date attached to it. And I think at that time, as my fellow council members, we're all looking at the budget primarily for next year, knowing that this year it'll be a little bit of a tough year. So with that in mind, I was surprised that it seemed to be an administrative decision to modify the in-kind program that was not put to action to council. So therefore, it's a little bit difficult to be brought for council action now to modify or accept when we haven't had a prior action on the subject. So I'm having a little bit of a difficulty with that. With the facility fees, I think the conversation was more about how do we treat that for the whole group, not just Aquafest in particular. And now it seems like we're asking for an exemption to the exception to the nonprofit fee, which is very difficult to process, right? So I would, that to me is, it seems that we should treat everybody the same in the in-kind program in terms of the facilities fees, but implemented next year. So looking at the timeline, and the second portion of that is the staff and overtime. I think most of the contribution for the city relies on police overtime and availability. And so because it is not a department budget item or a program item, it is not a budget amendment that we can vote on. So it is it's very difficult for me to come into the conversation and say yes to staff overtime or police overtime when that is a departmental and city administrative judgment call, whether or not it fits into their budget. I'm assuming for police, the overtime for the event would be covered by the vacancies that are budgeted for this year. So I would want the chief to answer the question of whether or not that would be covered in this year's budget. Overall, I think that this shouldn't have been an action item, but it should be incorporated in the budget so that council can have a say in the amount, whether we cap it at a certain amount or where do we take the money from, so that we can vote on it. But I'm having a hard time otherwise with what we're being asked to vote on tonight.
Director Garceau, do you want to respond to the question, the comment regarding council's role tonight and what we're voting for?
Sure. When we brought forward the in-kind program, That was to specify what staff had the ability to say yes to when it came to special events specifically. And so that was not an action item and was not meant to be an action item, but to get a consensus of the board of how to handle these as we move forward. And so we simply said, we can do the 18, talking about Aquafest, we can now approve this 18,000 in-house because of the line items that fall under it. These other ones are just to come forward for council review to say, yes, go, or let's look at reducing the cost for the city. And so the council's role in this is to tell us as staff what to approve for Aquafest or what to bill for. And so really with this, it is all about this $41,000. And do you want to provide the same amount of support as last year? As I mentioned before, yes, we have the same overtime budgets as the prior year. The only department that saw a decrease in budget that I am aware of to any large sum is the streets department. But with that, that's the public works side of the public works and parks costs. We can work that out with the 1 or 2 staff members that are approved in this. Police have the same budget line item as last year, unless I'm misspeaking, and he's nodding yes. And so technically, yes, it's in the budget, but that is always our maximum budget authority to spend as staff. And we, of course, have direction to not spend what we don't have to moving forward and to be very budget conscious. And so that's really why these changes are coming about and having that double check with council about these larger items.
Thank you, Sarah.
I have one more question.
Thank you.
Did the 2025 council in the city have a line item budget for Aquafest support in the 26 budget?
No, I believe that going back to either 2022 or 2023, that there may have been a line item over in the general budget that said Aquafest, but really it was any other events that also had cash contributions. So that would be where we paid for the trash bags and for the dumpster rental. But no overtime came out of that budget. It has since been turned in, I think maybe 2 years ago, to actually event support. I'd have to look at the full title of it. But for instance, Music of the Parks was paid out of that.
So there was money attributed to Aquafest in the budget, but it was commingled with other events as well to create a budget number.
Correct. Yes. And I believe the number this year may be a total of 4,000 or 5,000 total for what is the special event Aquafest. And that's how we pay for the consumables or the rental of the garbage specifically.
I think next year council will have to take a look at it and actually make that a budget because $59,000 is in the slight smack. It's a big hit, right? And if we budget for it, the community wants it, that's okay.
Thank you. Any further questions?
One more question. Did this come to the council as an approval in 23, 24, and 25 for that year's event? So we spent, was it 47,000 last year? Was that approved by council ahead of time? Knowing that the year before we had 30,000 spent or so. So why the difference now?
To my knowledge, this has never come to council for approval in advance. There may have been a couple of years prior to my being here with the city. So prior to 2022, where there was an after report where Aquafest came to say this is what our event did for the year. But there was no cost accounting internally with any of our departments other than police who do a great job accounting all of their overtime for what that meant as an event. And the departments certainly weren't creating one report to show. That has been one of my large lifts since I've been here, is really creating programs where they weren't writing policy and then cost accounting really to show the realistic cost of running a parks department, special events, and the programs that we manage.
Thank you.
I have another question. So one of the comments said that by the end of Q3 would be a good time to know what the city can give. As far as the budget, I was not here last year for budgeting. So I know that the budget wasn't finalized until what, December? Yeah, so I guess I want to make sure that everyone knows the budgeting process because there are some things that we just can't do faster. I guess my next question would be for Aquafest. What's your process as far as like when you sit down to start planning, when do you typically bring the ask to the city for the funds?
So first of all, we've never had to bring the ask to the city for the
Oh.
funds until we do our permitting process. And in there, there's a in-kind request that we fill out just like we did this year. And it happens at staff level in years prior. So there hasn't been a formal ask that's ever been needed as a dollar amount.
Okay, and that's, I guess, on the request for funds that I have seen, it has been, I assume a board member that has submitted those requests. The one that I saw was Mr. Daughtry. And so I feel like, maybe there was a little bit of conflict there with having a council member just submit that to be accepted. Our change of in-kind donations, that makes sense that, now you would have to come to us for approval because we just changed that policy. But I think that we need to look at our previous policies and make sure that we're not making these same mistakes.
So I'll just clarify one thing. Mr. Daughtry's name is on the permit application typically, and the in-kind request comes from treasurer, which was myself. And then by city requirement, it needs to be signed by the president of the board. So Kim has served as president. So in that year, he probably signed it. I have served, I've signed it. And then Chris Jacobson has signed in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
I have one process question, Sarah. The council will take some sort of action tonight. We either will make a motion and pass it, make a motion and not pass it, or not make a motion. If a motion is not made or if it doesn't pass, then I just want to make sure I understand, then the in-kind contribution for Aquafest would be the $18,869. Is that accurate?
That is what I have the approval to say yes to.
Okay.
I would highly encourage the council to come to some kind of conclusion tonight
Okay.
so that Aquafest can proceed.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that
Absolutely.
what the consequence is to each of those actions. Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, just to clarify, because we've kind of gone around it a bunch. I want to solidify my own understanding, but just make sure it's clear on the record. What we're being asked to approve tonight is not a budget amendment, correct? We are not, it's essentially money that's already in the budget, but we are approving above staff's threshold. So staff is okay to approve up to 18,000. To go beyond that, to approve money that's already in the budget, you need council approval on this 41,000, correct? Is that a correct way of stating it?
Correct. This
Okay.
would not result in a budget
Budget amendment.
increase for the departments.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Mariah or for Sarah?
I guess another process question. If you are to change the in-kind program effective date from 2026, that you just implemented 2 months ago, or a month ago, from 2026 to take effect in 2027, then all of this would not, so the mill and all of the nonprofits that would have now been charged, or would that then move that we're proceeding as last year or in previous years with the in-kind program? And then we can look at the budget impact for 27. Would that be a solution that would be better?
That would mean that I would not bring back any additional events to you. One of the problems we may run into is that there are some new events coming into file this year who haven't prior asked for requests. So those would add to my budget likely. We could absolutely have a consensus for staff to hold off on implementing this until 2027. My concern is then we may have the same situation in 2027 with a lot of groups. I really think that there is a simple solution here, that if it is the council's desire to support this event at the same level as last year, to approve this. If we come back, it likely will only be 2 or 3 additional events. We're setting a precedent with all of the new events that this is the in-kind program. And to ask for more we don't know because that hasn't been provided before. The other events that we're working with that may come forward is 4th of July, if they want to use the mill, or some of the other large downtown ones, such as a triathlon. But I wouldn't expect us to keep having this conversation with multiple events throughout the year. I would just caution that you, by deferring to 2027, may then have this whole conversation again in 1 year from now.
Thank you. We now have an opportunity to make a motion or not make a motion. By making a motion, that will open the door for further discussion. So I am looking to see what the council, how the council would like to proceed.
I move that the city approve support for Aquafest 2026.
I second that.
Can you repeat that?
I move that the city approve support for Aquafest 2026.
As,
And is that at the same level
Yeah.
as
Oh,
2025?
Yes, sorry, at the same level.
And I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I would just like to now echo Councilmember Packard and Councilmember McManus's comments. I definitely think some, fiscal detective work is warranted here, and there are things we can do both on our side and in partnership with the board of Aquafest to bring costs down and, evaluate the city's in-kind contribution going forward to be financially responsible. But ultimately, to me, this is an issue of timing and promises made. And I can't really point to any one thing and say, this is, this organization's fault, this person's fault. I simply think that, wires got crossed and support was, compromised when it was not meant to. It was compromised very late in the game. I don't think anybody intended that. I think we all appreciate this event, what it means to our community. And I think the best path forward would be to make sure it happens this year and then have robust discussions about next year with plenty of time to have those discussions.
And I would also make a comment that as part of the discussion that this becomes a line item for the budget for next year.
I would also add that all the other organizations that were discussed or on the list on the February 24th that are impacted by this new program change that would like to follow the same process that Aquafest is following, to contact the city and come back to us. And I speak for myself when I say that I would be very amenable to looking at the in-kind program for this year and not have a short amount of time for people to plan their events and be burdened or not be able to have them. So
I would agree with that.
And I would like to say, I don't think there's a single person sitting up here that doesn't support Aquafest. I understand that there's challenges to some of the local businesses, for sure. There's challenges for traffic and parking. And, there's all kinds of issues. There's also a ton of benefits. I've lived just a mile away from downtown for over 25 years. My kids grew up walking to Aquafest. I don't think there's any of us that are saying Aquafest isn't important, but this is what I do want to say. We came up with an in-kind process for a reason. I do not feel council should be picking and choosing who deserves money. I think the city should have a process for in-kind that can be budgeted and can be consistent and can be fair and can be non-biased. And that is my challenge with what's going on, is that inviting different groups to come up and say, oh, if you don't like our in-kind policy, come ask for a waiver, then puts our council in the position of we get to pick and choose instead of it being a city policy, which was the whole reason for us doing it. This last council I was part of, we worked hard to balance our budget and we made hard decisions and we made our department heads make very challenging decisions. And when they came back later because they needed a new operating system that our city desperately needs, we went back to them again, to 3 major departments and said, find us $34,000 more each department you can cut. We're talking about not filling vacancies. We're making some very, very, very challenging situations because like everybody else currently, we're not making as much money as we're spending. We see households dealing with it. They've got to cut spending or go into debt. We We see businesses going through it. They've got to cut spending or go out of business. They can't continue to increase prices or they price themselves right out of business. We have governments that aren't pulling back their spending and instead are increasing taxes. Our city did a very, very focused effort to balance our budget without increasing taxes. And one of the difficult decisions we made is to make changes in our in-kind policy. And I think those changes were warranted. So having said that, I am a person of my word. And if we led Aquafest to believe none of this would apply to them and they don't have enough time to rebound from that, and we've got it quasi in our budget, then I'm in favor of approving it for this year. But next year, I mean, I'm telling you, work on those volunteers, right? I also fully understand that with the pandemic, it changed everything in this world, everything. And one of the things that changed with Aquafest is we lost our carnival for a few years. And our board was very amicable in saying, we'll change the weekends, we'll do whatever we need. From what I understand, we ended up stealing Sultan's carnival to get that carnival back here. And so I appreciate all the effort and time that went into that. But I am going to ask Aquafest and those supporting Aquafest to recognize our big hearts don't pay our bills, right? Our wanting to support and be kind, do something that doesn't pay our bills. And that's why we have an in-kind policy, right? And it's not because we don't want to support nonprofits at all, but we got to pay our bills. And if you look around Lake Stevens and compare it to other communities, we have a thimble full of commercial property to pay those bills. And when everyone talks about your property tax, 7% of your property tax goes to Lake Stevens, a very, very small amount. And that goes to the entire city. So I just want to be perfectly clear that we are not heartless up here and saying we don't support Aquafest. It's unfortunate that it's reached this place where I feel like there's some hard feelings, because that's not who we are. But we are put in the very difficult position of balancing a budget in an economy that is not friendly to doing that without raising taxes. And we didn't want to raise taxes. So having said that, I feel we should stand up to our word, but next year should look different. And I'm a little nervous about every other program coming to us and saying, hey, how about you in-kind us again this year? We don't have the money to do that. And so that's kind of get off my soapbox there and just say people need to be aware. We've got new in-kind. You need to reach out, make that conversation with the city. And we're not doing this for any reason other than we don't want to raise taxes. And we need to look at ways to cut spending and capture revenue where we can. And that's the whole reason we have this policy.
Further discussion?
So I'll want to make a comment on that. I think a couple of things. One, this was not a budget discussion item for this year's budget. It was incorporated and assumed. So the in-kind policy was changed by the city in late February. And I think that to be fair with all the organizations that are affected by this policy, this is why 2026 is the year that if we're making an exception to the changed in-kind program for one organization, it's only fair that we would make the same change or allowance for other organizations that are smaller that may be not affording that and maybe needing more time to prepare. So what I've heard from, if I understood it correctly, from the Aquafest organizers is the same. It's the time crunch. It's the willingness to work with us in the 2027. Our request from the city has been to put it in the budget item, whether it's staff budget or an actual budget line item, so that council can actually evaluate trade-offs when we do have the conversations. And I think that's where we are. Yeah.
I just want to remind council discussion time is for us to discuss among the seven of us what we need to discuss to be able to come to a decision. So it's not an opportunity for us to speak to the public.
Yeah, and we also have a motion on the floor, so we really need to be talking to the motion at this point.
Thank you.
Can I ask Sarah a question?
No.
So, okay, well,
Question.
Can I ask a question about the process of motions as I'm new?
Yes.
If I propose an amendment to the motion, we would then vote on the amendment first. And then we would vote on the amended, we vote whether to add the amendment.
Correct.
And then do a separate vote of whether that motion with the amendment or motion as originally proposed. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to amend the original motion that we, defer the implementation date of the in-kind policy for all nonprofits who have previously worked with us before until January 1st, 2027. So that anybody who's done an event here before can operate in 2026 under the previous policy. If new nonprofits want to move forward and do an event, they have the policy in place. And then we can move forward and figure out 2027 impacts on 2027 beyond that.
We have an amendment to the motion asking that we delay the implementation of the in-kind policy to 2027. Do I have a second?
I second that.
We have a
I
motion.
just want to clarify, that is only for existing nonprofits, people who have done events with us prior, not new events.
List that we had in February that you had presented for the in-kind program.
So we have a motion and a second. Thank you for clarifying. Discussion on the amendment.
Yes, I support the intent behind that. My question is more, or my concern is more procedural, whether amending the original motion on Aquafest is the appropriate vehicle for enacting that, or if that needs to be its own separate item brought before council.
That's fine. I'm not particular about how it happens.
I agree with the intent behind it. Yeah, I just don't know if procedurally that's the way to do it.
And I think because that wasn't a focus of the presentation or discussion, I think that item might deserve its own discussion and further information to Councilman Donahue's point.
and a discussion further on that is I think that may also require a budget amendment because our Parks Department is budgeted based upon mill rental projections. And if the mill rental projections were based upon a 50% reduction limit, then that would affect the mill projections in the Parks Department's budget.
Greg is on, well, if you want to take his comments. Greg, are you wanting to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the motion to amend is really out of order. It speaks to a topic than the motion on the floor. And that it should be handled as a separate item.
Thank you, Greg.
Noted.
Would you care to?
I will redact or whatever the appropriate word is. Retract.
Withdraw.
Withdraw.
Yes.
Whatever the appropriate word is, I'll pull that back and we'll move forward on the original motion.
Can we have this as a motion for next council meeting?
We can have it as a discussion or action item. I think we'll talk about that at the agenda
First,
setting.
don't we have to resolve the pending motion, and then we can.
Yeah, let me just restate. So the motion on the floor is for the city to approve support for the 2026 Aquafest as this in the same level as last year.
Correct. Any further discussion? All right, then I would call for the vote. All of those in favor of supporting Aquafest at the 2025 level, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to our discussion items for the evening. The first discussion item is the 2025 year-end financial update, and Matthew will be leading us through that discussion. Maybe we'll wait 30 seconds until the room settles. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, Matthew, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, council. My name is Matthew Heist. I'm the finance manager here, and move this over here. But let's see. All right, so yeah, so I'm just here today, tonight to provide you just an update of what 2025 year end looks like on the financial standpoint. So right here, as you see on the screen here, is that this is just a picture of where our revenues, expenditures, and ending balances. And as you can see in the green line there, that is our budget of what was budgeted. And in the red there is what is the 2025 year end, and 2024 is the 2024 year end is the blue as well. So to just kind of see that those comparisons, and then down below the actual numbers as you see there down below. I do want to point out, as you might see with our budgeted revenues and even expenditures, that there's a gap between there. The gap is because there's mainly due to grant funding that we had anticipated that we didn't get in 2025, but we do anticipate in getting that in 2026. And mainly that's because of projects that's also in line with our expenditures as well, because usually grant funding is reimbursed to us. So if we're not spending the money, we're not getting that money back. So just kind of want to point that out, and that's why you'll see those differences right there. Might have questions on that. Right here are our major revenue sources citywide. You'll see that we'll have that there's right here on the left side are the sources. We have the funds of where those are coming from, and those are grouped together, as you will see there. And also the uses, which means whether or not those are restricted or unrestricted, meaning that the use of those are restricted or not. So over to the right side, you see some yellow highlight ones, and those are highlighted just because they were more significant changes. As you see, as we see, construction sales tax we had budgeted. So hopefully you guys don't get too confused that the far right there is our 2025 budget versus 2024. That's not our actuals to actual. That's budget to actual. So that was what we were anticipating on. And then that second to right there is the 2025% actual to budget. So what we had budgeted for construction sales tax, and we anticipated, we actually, you see like 162% more that we received than we had anticipated with that. And you can kind of see with the other ones that are highlighted, there's building permits and zoning and subdivision, and then down below the traffic impact fees, park impact fees. There's more going on than we had anticipated with construction. And so that's probably would explain most of what those increases are there of why we ended higher than what we had budgeted for. Some other ones that I just want to point out as well. You do see that our transportation benefit money as well, that's continued as we anticipated having about 1.5 million, and we've been receiving a little bit more than that. Actually about 1.7 million in 2025. And then our investment interest, this is one where we actually received a little bit more than we had anticipated. But you do see that the budgeted amount was 77% to 2024 actuals. And that actually, and you do see that we did actually get less interest than we did from 2025 to 2024. And that's mainly due with interest rates coming down. All of our money is in the LGIP, which follows a lot of the Fed rates very closely with the Fed rate. So as the Fed rates go down, that goes down. What we receive as well goes down. Yeah. Right here is the screen is our revenue, just based off the major sources. That local sales tax does include, so this makes up 19% of the citywide revenues. This does include the construction sales tax in there as well, because that's lumped together. Our property taxes are second largest at 12%. And then investment interest is 5%, the total of our revenues, and it has decreased 19% over the prior year. Our real estate excise taxes or REITs decreased 8% in 2025, but our traffic and park impact fees increased 84 and 71% respectively, with our building permits increased to 66%. And then we have the transportation benefit program increased 8%. And here, just so you can kind of see, as I know I've gone through here in the chart, you have the lines, or I guess the bars are the actual amounts between the two different years, 2024 and 2025. And the lines up above are those budgeted amounts for 2025 and 2026. Here we have our sales tax and how that's broken out. As I said, you'll see construction sales taxes in there as well, and highlighted our four major portions of our sales tax that we get. One thing to keep into consideration, construction sales tax is something that we consider as one-time money because you can't consistently depend on construction. It eventually will go down at some point. You only have so much construction that you can do before that amount goes down. As opposed to the retail amounts, those are businesses within the city, and those are going to be, you're going to continue. You should expect more consistent revenues with those as well. So.
Recording in progress.
Sorry. And here we have is going on the expenditure side. We have sorry, we got the echo there. Citywide expenditures by type. And so as you see right here is that salaries, benefits, and overtime is a significant portion of our operational expenses at 33%. Of our total citywide expenditures there. And that was an increase of 6% over the prior year, but also ended at 88% of our budget. So a lot of that is the cost savings from open positions for that. Capital outlay made up 48% of the budget, but as you can see, it ended at 33% of all the expenditures. Again, that's just how we've budgeted with the capital and all that, and that doesn't take place. It's not always, we don't necessarily expect those. I think if you remember at the council retreat, how Aaron was talking about certain projects. We have those budgeted, but it's not, they don't always come to completion and typically run over from year to year as well. So, and then services ended at 83% of our budget, an increase of 10% over the prior year. And then interfund include transfers out that equal interfund transfers in on the revenue side. So those cancel each other out. This right here is our general fund summary right here. So on the top there is the general fund 001 of where we are. Between the red and blue lines are the expenses and the revenues, and then the lines below is where or the bars is going to show you where our balances have been throughout the year, and matching to or comparing from year to year as well. And then down below there are our other general managerial funds that we have. We have our contingency fund, our permit fund in the purple down below. Sorry, the contingency is the blue one up on top there. The pandemic recovery fund is the green one. And then we have the commercial rental fund there, the red on the bottom there. So that's where we are with and as you can see there is that we still our general fund is at about 4.8 million is what we're ending our balance at there. Here is kind of an overall picture between the budgets, the budgeted revenues, budget expenditures, and what's been collected and what's been expended as well, and the percentages there. And then at the very end are the cash and investments at the very end there. In the gray there, I highlighted some of those items that I had pointed out. So you see, like in our park mitigation revenues, we did anticipate to receive grant funding for the Frontier Heights and Cedarwood in a total of 3.6 million. Those were not received in 2025. And so that explains the difference there. As you can also see too, in the revenues, they're a lot less than what was budgeted. But then you also look on the expense side as well, and you see that the amount budgeted as well is really low as well. So that just indicates that there's projects that haven't started, haven't gotten fully underway for there as well. So you have your REIT 2 as well. So those revenues, again, so we did not receive all our federal funding for the main streets in 2025. We will be receiving the rest of that grant revenue this year. I think we're coming to completion with that, if I recall correctly. And then you have our facilities capital projects fund as well. We did, and this one's a little bit different. We anticipated to purchase or a property to sell that has not sold, had not sold yet in 2025. And there was also some grant funding as well that we had not received yet, but anticipate receiving in 2026. And then the storm and surface water and the capital, again, those just had grant funding that we had not yet received yet, and that we've been starting to receive in 2026. So there's kind of some comments there on some of those bigger ones that highlight there what those differences are. And then right here, there's our debt service. And these are the different debts that we have as a city, where we are at the end of the year near over there, the total balance as of year end. And you can also see what our funding sources are, and you can see the year of payoff. You can see within the next couple years, there will be a couple of these that will be fully, and this year specifically, one will be fully paid off, and then a couple others coming up the road too to be paid off. So, and that's all that I have for you for where we are in our finances. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Matthew?
Okay. All right.
Great presentation.
Great
job. No one has any questions. I don't know that's happened before.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate your time. Moving on to our second discussion item, Jean is going to talk a little bit about the Citizen Financial Task Force.
Very much. It's a bit of a backstory. During the 2026 budget process, we had a lot of discussion about revenues and revenue sources and what to cut and what to fund and all of that. And one of the commitments that we all made together is to look into our finances this year and really dig deep, educate not only the council, but have a closer look at our expenditures, our service levels, everything that goes into that. So in working with Mayor Gailey, he had talked to, other cities out there, and Mount Lake Terrace had really done a really nice job of having a citizens advisory group put together, called it a task force. So he asked me to look into that and then bring this information back to council for consideration as an option that we might want to implement here. So I took the liberty to do a bunch of phone calls, and we actually met with a representative from Mount Lake Terrace and had the discussion with them and got the insight to the process that they went through. And their process was a year-long process. And that was because the consultants need to do a deep dive right out of the gate to find out, okay, where is the baseline? Where is the city at financially? So that's where they started. And through that process, they actually developed a citizen advisory group towards the middle about 3/4 of the way through the process, they developed this group, started educating them, providing them with all sorts of materials to bring them up to speed on the city finances. All the while, the consultant that they chose was working on updating their financial model, and they produced at the end a long-term financial plan for the city. I went ahead and called 3 different consultants, FCS, Burke, and Baker Tilly, and had a conversation with them about our timeline. And because we're trying to prepare for our budget season, our timeline is pretty short. And each one of those consultants said that that is too short of a timeline. We need pretty much a year to be able to do something similar. That being said, everybody in the group, in that group that I called, agreed that a phase 1 would be needed, which is the deep dive into the city's finances. That would take around 3 months to complete that work. And at the end of that, the company would produce basically a report of where the city finances are, some recommendations, but just basically a baseline for us to work from. After that, and that again was $30,000 to $40,000 to complete that work. Our last financial model was put together in 2018, and you just saw Matthew present some of that. The graphs that you saw, that comes from our financial model. We've been using it for a number of years. I would recommend that that gets updated at some point. To get to that point, we would need to fund phase 2 and phase 3 to be able to actually have a financial model at the end. And you're talking about $100,000, $120,000 all in if we went through that process. But we also need to look at our stormwater rates. We haven't done that in a number of years. We've talked about what does it look like to maintain private storm ponds, all of that stuff. And so as we talked at staff level, if we did move forward on a phase 1, it would be smart to incorporate stormwater rates in there as well as part of our research. Okay. The other thing that the financial model would do would be modernized. And right now, I think Matthew's pretty much the only one that can operate the model we have. It's Excel, it's super complicated. And so maybe we'd get something a little more modern that other staff members could operate. But Matthew does it for us now, does a great job. The consultants said, each one of them stated that if we put a financial task force together of citizens, the goal would be not only to educate them, but to have them as support systems out in the field, talking about the city, talking about the financial constraints we have, some of the service level issues that we have. You know, we're struggling to maintain service levels because of costs are going up. They would be our advocates. In order to get them to that point, we have to educate them and put the time into it because, I mean, you are all learning right now about the city finances. It's quite complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. So we wouldn't want to rush that component because at the end, you want to have allies because at some point in time, we may or may not have to go out to the voters to ask for additional money if that's what is decided. And they would be our advocates and champions to move initiatives like that forward. So that's something to keep in mind. Any questions there before I go into a recommendation? Yes.
So I guess my first question was, I was a little surprised when I saw that we would be looking at $30,000 to $40,000 to update the financial model. I guess I'd always just assumed we had that capability in-house. We had a very talented finance team. So what skill set, what capability that's outside of our current, our wheelhouse would we be getting for $30,000 to $40,000?
So just so I'm clear, the financial model is an additional step. So phase 1 is just a deep dive. Basically, they go through all our records, cross-examine, if you will, all of our reports and our financials we presented just like tonight, make sure there's accuracies throughout. We believe there is because we get clean audits, but these consultants specialize in that field.
Sorry, I misspoke there. Ultimately getting to that model, same question. I assumed that we had that capability in-house. So this extra money, these consultants, like what are they doing? What is their skill set that we need to bring them in to do this work rather than having it done in-house?
Yeah, great question. And we might have that talent in-house. We don't have the bandwidth to do it. It is a heavy lift. If it's going to take a consulting group 3 months to do it, I mean, it's just not a task that we could take on. In addition, it's kind of like a peer review, right? We're doing it in-house, and so you want checks and balances. So it's wise to have an outside third party come in and review our work.
That makes sense. I guess kind of back to my surprise, I would have assumed that updating the model and making sure it was, sufficient for what we need would be an ongoing process. Maybe not something where every roughly 10 years, 8 to 10 years, we say, oh, we got to redo this. That makes me wonder, is the current model, like, are there accuracy questions? Is it reliable? And Matthew, I don't know if you're in a position to comment on this, but it concerns me, I guess, that we're looking at such a large expenditure to get this to a point where we consider it up to date, when that's what we're basing all of our financial decisions on as a council, is this model.
Yeah, I would say that it's an Excel-based document that we have, and we've had it for quite some time that I know. And so the issue is that once you start playing around in Excel with different models, they are very it can get susceptible to breaking. And I have been working on it, trying to see how it can help streamline it. And not only that, it's also very, it takes a lot of time to update it on our part, as well as Gene had been indicating, just the bandwidth that we have. And with new features in Excel and things like that, it's trying to get that. It would be we could update that and try to find that out as well. But it would take a significant amount of time through all the different worksheets and everything that we have, is what I would say. And I'd also, so it's something that's possible, but it's the bandwidth for us to get there would take a long time.
Are you still confident in our current model?
Yes. Yeah, I'm still fairly confident. I think when we had this done prior, it was, Gene, I don't know if you recall, but it was, I think that they kind of had, they kind of gave us some models that we've just kind of, we try to update as best we can. Sometimes in our finance group, we are accountants by nature, not finance. In their, there's a huge difference between that.
Yeah.
So we've so kind of understanding a lot of that finance portion, and I know it's, we are the finance department, it's but kind of accountants by nature, it's kind of trying the predicting and things like that. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody who's more knowledgeable as well, to help provide numbers that will be more consistent and hopefully more real time than what we might provide. So
then, while I'm loath to even bring this up, hearing a potential 6-figure price tag for an updated model, and hearing that maybe there's a skill set that we could benefit from having on our team, I don't know if it's worth looking at. Is that a capability we need to add to our staff in the long term going forward? So something to think about.
Hey, we could certainly look at that. And this is much like if you think of your car, right? You got to change the oil, you got to make updates, you got to do software updates. 10 years ago was a long time ago for Excel. A lot of things have changed. And so it's just smart business. It's no different than the auditors coming in and checking our work every year. And
They
so
charge us $100,000 for the audit.
oh,
And I'll just add, 10 years ago was a long time ago for the city of Lake Stevens. Like, our city has gone through such dramatic change in a really relatively short period of time. I think that we're starting to experience in the way that the finances look, that we're outgrowing what's worked in the past.
Yeah, quick question, and that $40,000 to kind of take a look at it and get ready, would it be an additional 120 on top of that to implement, or?
no, all in, you're
All in.
around 100 to 120.
Okay, thank you.
To do the model. And again, I haven't received quotes, but this is estimates from those 3 companies.
Okay.
question on how this is structured. If I understand it correctly, and I am in favor of bringing a third party in to just kind of give us an idea of what is the right level of expenditures to revenues ratio that we should shoot for? What is our, reserve percentage that should be there, considering that in the last 7 years, I think I'm looking at the 2019 budget, which I realize it's really a long time ago. We went from revenues at 29 million, expenditures at 27 million. So you have like a $2 million kind of difference. In 26, we go to 51 revenue to 66 million expenditures. So you go to a $15 million delta, which is the same in 25. And you've presented today that the year-end balance from the budgeted to the actual was less. So that's hopeful to learn. And hopefully we'll be at that in 26 as well. The one thing that I think I'm having a little bit of questions about is a citizen task force aspect. I think my preference would be that this would be a council budget committee that is looking into this versus going through the process of interviewing a panel of citizens, then teaching them, then getting a report back while we're trying to do a budget and looking at the 5 to 6 year forecast. So I think that that's my only kind of comment on that.
Okay. Can you provide clarification when you talk about the financial model, Councilmember Araya, what you said about reserve studies and things like that is not what I envisioned when you talk about a financial model. I'm thinking you're looking at the Excel spreadsheets and how things are calculated and what percentages we look at for whatever accounting terms you want to use, and not what you're talking about. Sounds to me more like how we budget and how we approach finances as opposed to accounting jargon. I mean that in the nicest way.
Yeah, I guess my understanding, so I would appreciate the clarification. My understanding is that this group will come in, will look at our finances, will compare it to similar experiences or their past experience and make some recommendations and outreach materials to inform the citizen group or the council to make decisions based on that. Is that
Correct.
okay?
So they'll come in, do
Not
the
me,
deep
but-
dive, review all our numbers, see if there's accuracies or discrepancies. And as they move towards the model, they'll identify opportunities for more revenues or whatever they may want to recommend, right? They might recommend your reserves need to be higher, or they could be lower, or whatever may come out of that. But at the end product that we want that we can use is the updated financial model, along with all the other information they'll provide as we head that direction.
It sounds like, and I agree with Council President Jorstad, that just doing this initial exercise may bring about a lot of really good insight, and it may be there's an updated software program that we could purchase that would make it go quicker, faster, not be such a burden on staff. Whether we ever get to the point of a citizens review, it sounds like it's a good idea just to do that based on the growth of our city, which Council President Jorstad mentioned earlier.
Following up on that, if all we're looking at initially is that kind of taking a look at what we're doing and how we could be doing it more efficiently or differently, is that still a $30,000 to $40,000 investment? Okay. I just want.
I think that's a smart idea, because if we try to do it all at once and stand up a citizens task force, all the education that has to come out of it, it's kind of like changing the engine while you're flying the plane, right? It would be better if we got a financial model that was repeatable, that was sound, that was quick, that could be run even monthly if we needed to through software. Then starting up a citizens panel makes sense, because we're going to be feeding them good and accurate information, not confusing them with, we're trying to fix it so you can see it accurate. You know what I mean? And I do think it's a good idea, not to take away the power of the council, but get recommendations from the city and hopefully create some of those ambassadors out in the city that are talking about the good things we're doing, not all the things they think are going wrong.
I want to respond to Councilmember Araya's idea about a committee, a council committee, and Ryan, feel free to chime in.
Why, what?
This, I figured, this was brought forth as an idea last year. And there was some pretty robust discussion about whether or not it made sense to have a smaller budget committee within the council. There were pros and cons. There were council members at that time who had tried that before several years ago and had brought their experiences forward. Ultimately, last year, we decided not to do that. But I do think we have a new council, we have new staff. I think it's worth a discussion again. And so I would like to suggest that we bring that forward on a future agenda item as a discussion item.
I would agree.
Yeah, so I'll just say, I agree with Councilmember Raya, and I think it's mainly, while I appreciate the idea of ambassadors, citizens out there, I think there are other ways to get feedback from the citizens. For one, I know we've used like Zen City in the past, or I'm not opposed to focus groups, things like that. Where I think I have a bit of a sticking point is we've got a bunch of new council members, council members who have been on the council for a couple of years now, could always use a refresher. If we're going to allocate any resources to budget, education, deep dives, I think for at least the next year, if not the next couple of years, that's better spent on the council itself so we can make better decisions. And our decisions are what they are. If the community disagrees with them, then we are held to account. I don't want to expend resources, building myself personally some kind of shield from my responsibility. If I make a bad budget call, then it's in view of the public and I will be held to task.
And I agree with Councilmember Donahue. We've got 4 new council members. We're getting a new mayor. We just had another resignation within the city, pretty big one. There's a huge learning curve, I think, with our city administration right now. And we're put in place to make those tough choices. That was what I spoke to today, is we've had to make some really tough choices. And I think streamlining it so it's not an Excel sheet that we only have 1 or 2 people able to understand is probably a really good idea. And we've updated other software in the city. So I think that's definitely moving in the correct direction. And President Georgestad, absolutely, I've lived in the city 25 years. We are a different city than we were in 2018. So when it comes to a citizens task force, a couple of things. Number one, for the Parks Board, we had 4 people apply, right? There's not this huge outpouring from our citizens that have time to invest in this, let alone the qualifications that would be needed for a citizens board like this. When it comes to the city council board, I remember that discussion in the workshop. Who has time to do one more board, right? My evenings are pretty packed with council business. So as we're talking about even putting something together within our council, who has that extra time to truly do that? That was one of the things that came out of the workshop is I didn't see a lot of hands raised. Everyone thought it was a good idea to take a closer look. That's always a good idea. Who has the time to do it? So just a few things to consider there.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yeah, I am not a fan of spending the money and talking to somebody else. I mean, we do audits. Our city has been audited multiple times. We say that we've got a strong financial situations, right? We've got a good control of our audit and our money and where it's going. We know that. We've done that multiple years. I also mean this in nice ways possible. We pay our finance department a lot of people. We're going to hire now a new finance director. Why can that not be part of the qualifications? We want you to be bringing in skills that enable us to go in and build this model. Have we done an assessment already to say what tools are out there? We just redid our public works software. Is there similar software out there for city finance stuff? I don't see the need to spend $40,000 just to scope out what is the situation and then dive into something else. I think we are paying people a good amount of money. If it takes us a year or 2 to do that ourselves, it sounds like it's going to take a year for a consultant to do that anyways. I think we should be able to do that ourselves. Maybe there's a software package we need to buy to facilitate that. We shouldn't yeah, in my opinion, our software people should not be writing their own finance model in Python or Excel or anything else. Like there's real software out there. There's got to be something that we can do. I don't think we should go spend that money to go do that.
Thank you. Jean, do you need any direction or additional information?
Well, yeah, I guess. To put it bluntly, yeah, I do. I need some direction. Happy to continue to work with the council and bring you updated numbers. As you read in your email this evening, we do have some staffing changes coming forward. And so our bandwidth is going to be less than it is today. And we want to make sure we get bills paid and take care of the have to do's. And this is over and above. It's a project. So if we were to move forward on it, I would recommend incorporating the stormwater rates in there. That is not included. I want to make sure I'm clear on this point that that's not included in the $30,000 or $40,000. That's only the deep dive. So to do a stormwater rate study, that's going to be an additional amount, but that would be paid from stormwater. The 30 and 40 we've cobbled together with budget savings in different spots to be able to do that phase one now. So if council chose to have staff work on that, we could do that portion and hire a consultant to get that going. But I would recommend mid to late summer before we even start that process. We just don't have the ability to do it with everything else we've got going on. And then we could move into 2027 discussion, whether or not it would be part of the proposal. Do we fund phases 2 and 3 to update the financial model? We could do that. I just need to have some direction. And I'm happy to bring this back in a month after you've thought about it. That's totally fine by me. But right now it's a project on my list and I just need kind of some direction on what council wants to do.
Can I add, this is HR Director Warrington. I'll just add that to Councilmember Packard's point about the software, we have looked at ERP solutions in the last few months, which would include updating our financial software system to include budgeting packages and projections, including HR software. And we had to put a pin in that project because we don't have staff capacity to project manage a full ERP solution. It's a very big task. And one of the staffing requests we brought forward a couple weeks ago, the management analyst would help drive that project forward. And so that could be a solution in the future. But just given our staffing levels in both the HR and finance department, we just don't have capacity right now to look and explore for improved software at the moment.
Question. What would be the end goal of this effort? Is it so we're going to work on the budget for next year, kind of at the council level. I think our goal is to have revenues and expenditures align or be sustainable over the foreseeable future. So 5 to 10 years so that we don't see a potential dipping into the reserves or the percentage reserves. Is that the goal of this effort? Is it to fix a potential structural deficit that other cities are seeing and that may result in an increase of revenue ask in terms of taxes from our citizens? Is that the goal? Is that what you're seeing that this will lead to at the higher level?
I believe that's part of the goal. Part of the goal is to educate the new council on the budget process. In addition, I believe at some point in time, we're going to have to go to the voters for additional money. We've done the cuts that the council had talked about earlier this evening, and there's not a lot more to cut. And so at some point with everything, the costs going up, wages going up, cost of living every year, somewhere we need to come up with additional revenue. And if the council's comfortable moving that forward to a vote at some point in time with the taxpayers, you got to have a pro and con committee. You guys know how all that works. And so the question is, will we have advocates out there for the pro committee? I don't know the answer to that, but one vehicle, which was used by Mountain Lake Terrace, was to put a citizens task force together to have those advocates and say, you know what, community, if you want these nice parks and stuff, the money's not there, or you want nice streets or whatever it might be. That is one of the outcomes if you were to go with a full citizen task force. But updating the financial model, those two things, what you had mentioned, and long-term forecasting as well.
I'm just noticing the time at 7:59. We will need a motion to extend the meeting if we want to continue this conversation and do council business.
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting 15 minutes.
No longer than 15 minutes?
We'll start with 15 minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Motion is second to extend to 8:15. Any discussion? All the,
I would just say, I mean, Gene, I don't know if you have enough direction. I don't know if anyone has any burning council business. I personally, your suggestion to give us some time to think about it and then come back, maybe submit follow-up by email. I'm comfortable with that, but I don't know if anyone.
I just didn't know if someone was going to make a motion and I wanted to give a little space
wanted to
for
make
that.
the motion.
I am not going to make one. I want to give a little bit of space.
the other thing that isn't on the agenda is to hear about upcoming agenda items. We would also have to forego that if we were to end the meeting now.
My motion still stands.
We have a motion to extend to 8:15 in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. 8:15 will be our goal to end this meeting.
I propose that I bring this back in a month or two. Let things settle down a bit. We'll know where we're at staffing wise at that point in time.
Will we?
I think I'll make a comment that before we raise revenues, you mentioned we cut as much as we could. I don't think the new council is feeling that way right now, or all of us are comfortable with saying all of the potential cuts so that we can go back to the residents and say, we have cut everything we can. So I think that's our task this year in the 27 budget before we ask people for more revenue.
Great point. Thank you.
Jean, would you be able to bring back some sort of maybe a sample of what these models might look like?
I can. We've have a ton of information from Mount Lake Terrace that they sent over and I can.
Basics, I think is.
Yeah, I will.
Good start.
I'll work with Caitlin and we'll send some information out because we've got a bunch.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm just doing maybe a presentation so we have a little better idea of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Well, to that point, Barb sent out a budget model light copy last year during our discussions, and it's a beast of an Excel sheet, even in that format. So be careful what you're asking for.
This is true.
Just the Cliff Notes, that's all we want. Yellow book, you guys have all seen it, you went through college.
Excellent, thank you.
Still use books.
Yep. Moving on to council business. Let's start at the end with Councilman Packard, and then we'll move our way this way.
Nothing from me today on council business.
Thank you, Councilwoman Edwards.
All right, so just really quick, I was able to attend the Easter egg stuffing on Saturday for the Easter event. That was so much fun. We had so many high school volunteers. It was so awesome. There was families that came with their kids, adults, people even from other cities. It was pretty cool. And then yesterday, along with Councilmember Araya, I attended the Elementary 8 groundbreaking ceremony for the new elementary school next to Stevens Creek. And so that was really exciting to get to meet the engineers and see all of that break ground. So, and then the only other thing I wanted to say is that I really appreciate everybody working together to come to a solution for Aquafest. You know, like I said earlier, that it really is an important event for our city. And I think that we should just move forward being really careful and make sure that we know what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Shipman.
I attended the school board meeting. This last meeting was at Stevens Creek Elementary, and their focus was on special services, otherwise known as special needs, special ed, that type of thing. And it was very in-depth from preschool all the way through the high school, and very impressive program. It was very heartfelt. I literally felt driven to make a comment about the presentation they had. We have some pretty amazing services available to our families and to our students. I was unable to make the couldn't quite get out of my office in time. I really wanted to be there yesterday for the groundbreaking of Elementary School 8. I was able to make the public meeting here about the revamping of Cove Park boat launch. of North Cove Park. And so we had quite a few people show up. There was a lot of, good information shared and boards where people could put stickers on their likes and didn't likes and Post-its for ideas. So I always welcome that type of feedback from the citizens. And I appreciate our departments coming together to provide that.
Great, thank you. Councilman Donahue.
Yeah, nothing for me other than just a reminder that I will be unable to attend next week's meeting. So all of you enjoy.
Councilman McManus.
I attended the marina. I thought that was really good. A lot of people had some really good ideas. It was kind of comical how they were moving lines around on all the different storyboards and pictures of the overhead. And some of them were really funny. Like one of the guys says, "Can you tell me how I'm going to back up my boat, and not hit the boat right here?" on one of the drawings. So it was really funny to hear that citizen input. Also spent the week, I visited 3 principals at each level, elementary, middle, and high school. Kind of got their feedback from an educator who's actually in it versus on a board, staying it and managing it. So it was very eye-opening to get some feedback from them on things they'd like to see from council, which will come up in a more pertinent date later. And then also spent some more time downtown talking to some of the business owners, specifically around Aquafest and its impact. I asked for numbers on an economic impact for, last week when we talked. And I wasn't sure if we were going to get, it was a good economic impact or a bad economic impact. I think hearing from Jay's Market tonight that they're considering closing down was concerning during Aquafest and some of the challenges. So, while I love that they came up with a number that was based on other festivals on a national number that generated 2.2, that's all kind of swag to me until we get actual numbers. So that's kind of led me to make the discussion point of let's make this a budget item next year on our balance sheet to make sure we're more concise and not borrowing from different pots of money in the city that contain the overtime that we need and all that good stuff. So it was eye-opening. I was really surprised. A lot of the businesses downtown that aren't serving food or beverages are kind of looking to close during Aquafest, which is just concerning. So was it?
Thank you. Councilwoman Araya.
Right. Just a couple of things. Last Friday, Director Halverson and other city staff gave me a tour of the Public Works facilities and parks facilities, and I was very impressed with the condition of how we keep our facilities. They were not glamorous, but very well kept. They were just the right size, and equipment was pristine. So I was just very impressed with how we keep the condition we keep our facilities and our equipment. And so kudos on that, and I appreciate the time. Congratulations to the school district on the groundbreaking yesterday. That's awesome to see. We have a great school district. I think everybody agrees with that. And kind of on a announcement note, in my day job, I do transit. So part of that is sitting on the Transportation Operators Committee at Puget Sound Regional Council. And Puget Sound Regional Council is a great organization. They also are the ones that administer all the federal grants that transit agencies receive and distribute it. So it's really a very powerful organization, but they also do regional transportation planning. So for the summer, they do have a summer planning academy available for high school students. To learn more about the program, you can go to Puget Sound Regional Council's website. Applications are due May 18th. So they also have a $500 scholarship opportunity. So I would really encourage, I saw a lot of high school students being involved with council, and it would be really cool if they check out this opportunity and start early. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. I will just say that I've spent the last week learning quite a bit about what it means to be mayor pro tem, which is short for mayor pro tempore, which is Latin for the time being. So for the time being, I don't officially take that role for another week and a half or so, but I want to let council know that I'm still also a council member and will be. And so I look forward to leading the seven of us through this uncharted territory that we're about to enter. I think that it's really a great opportunity for our city, and it's the gravity of the decision that we have to make is quite big. So I look forward to working together through this process. I'm excited. I think it's a really exciting opportunity that not a lot of councils get. And so there's still a lot to work out. There's a lot of process to kind of figure out. I think over the next couple of weeks, it'll be learning by fire hose what that looks like and how we're going to do this. And I look forward to those discussions. I think it's really important during this time too that we keep in mind that this is a real upheaval for our city staff. And so anything we can do to lend some extra support, some extra stability, to help remember that all of us are a team working together to move through this, I think is going to be really important. It's going to be busy. We all still have work to do. We all still have our council business to do. The city still has their city business to do. And in the meantime, we need to go through this process and help determine who the next leader of the city will be. So I look forward to diving in. I thank you in advance for your support and confidence in me and us. And I think we'll get through it. I think it'll be great.
Thanks for taking it on, Angie.
Yeah. Just want to remind people there's a form at your table. Please fill that out or ask Caitlin if you have any questions. And then I'm also going to ask if we can get just a little sneak peek at what our agenda might look like in the next week or two.
And while I'm pulling it up, Councilmember Araya, if you want to leave me that flyer, maybe there might be something we can do to share it on our social media if it's through PSRC.
I also, while you're pulling that up, I also will not be here next Tuesday.
Okay, so I'll make this quick. So sadly, Mayor Brett Gailey's last meeting will be next week on the 7th. I say sadly because I'm going to miss him terribly. Anyway, we're going to do a thank you to him at the beginning of the meeting, give him a nice plaque, and then we'll break for cake and refreshments. So public is welcome to come down for that. And then we'll go into our workshop, which will be the pros plan presentation. I think we've got a consultant here, and that's going to be a little more lengthy of an item. As Council President alluded to, we may want to do a review with you guys on the council procedures as far as the role of the mayor pro tem. And if there's anything we need to address in our council procedures, we'll do that. So we're meeting with Greg tomorrow to kind of go through that.
So can you clarify? So that's again, role, LOROLE role is what you're talking about?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
thanks, Nathan. Yep. no,
Thank you.
it's
And then
role,
we
ROLE.
will also discuss the process by which we will appoint.
That'll come up on the 14th, I think. But yeah, give us a chance to kind of talk with Greg tomorrow. We're
Okay,
going to
I
lay
see
this
it.
out, but
Sorry, I see it on the 14th.
yeah, I think the more immediate is sort of talking about the council, the mayor pro tem's role, making sure we've got that all covered. And then on the 14th, we'll talk about a timeline for the vacancy.
Timeline and process.
And process, correct.
Thank you.
So that's the 7th meeting. Oh, an executive session on potential litigation, but there's no action. Again, always fluid spreadsheet. This could change. I say that every time. All right. And then April 14th, looking for a pros plan approval. Matthew's going to be bringing forth a resolution to authorize us to participate in these opioid settlements without having to bring them individually. You'll hear more about that. Community Development has a couple city department updates on their first quarter, and also the campus update. We've been working quite a bit on the council Facebook conversation. I'm pretty sure after today's meeting, we'll be ready to come back and talk about that. The chief's got a cannabis ordinance to bring forward. Department of Emergency Management ILA on consent. Again, we'll dive into the mayor vacancy process and timeline, and also tentative agreement with the Row Club on the 14th. So we're gonna have a couple busy meetings here coming up. I'll just go out one more on workshop for the 21st. We'll have the annual police department awards, critical area ordinance update, traffic impact fee discussion. One thing that was noted today, thank you, Councilmember Shipman, was talk about those summer break dates for you guys so you can plan on our council meeting recess. I just need to check in on Aquafest, and also I believe Farmers Market might be I don't want to say anything out of turn, might be using the mill. So I just want to make sure I've got all that solidified and we'll come back to you with that. We're going to try to bring the org chart staffing requests back to you as a follow-up sometime in April. I put it here on the 21st as a tentative, and then the RFP on Caballero. Again, just planning purposes.
Just like to reiterate my desire, not seeing it on the list for e-bike ordinance discussion. at some
Yes,
point.
I-
So, yes.
Okay.
I'm sure it's in the parking lot somewhere. You don't have to.
It is. I've
I
seen it.
trust
It
you,
is.
but
I've
I'm-
seen it in the
is.
parking lot.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know Chief has mentioned it several times. So I mean,
Okay.
I know it's on the radar, but yeah, I just don't have a date plugged in yet, but I will. So,
Thank you, Clerk Challen.
yeah.
Appreciate it. Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.